I want you guys to think about the places you'd love to live. Think about the places you go on vacation, the places you go back to time and time again. And I want you to think about the amenities that those communities have to offer. So specifically think about the kinds of things that you want to gather up and bring back home with you. And I'd like to suggest that in Mississippi, we already have the tools available to create the kind of places that we're proud of, that we can call home, and places that we'd love to live. If you look down, you'll see two of the greatest agents of change the world has ever known. Your own 2 feet. And I'd like to offer you 2 simple solutions for how you can create communities where people are better engaging with one another, where we can increase livability and quality of life. Make your cities bikeable and walkable, and you'll see communities that are better engaging with one another, people that are getting out and getting active. Because the truth is, we aren't building our cities to reflect the needs of the people. And I think if we continue building our cities the way we are, then we'll continue to fight a battle against obesity. We'll continue to lose opportunities to gain and retain talent. And I think we'll miss the potential to bring young families and generations with the potential to move to our communities. When I came to Mississippi 15 years ago, I took a job as a volunteer coordinator, and I worked with college students to plan service projects. And I spent a lot of time thinking about ways that students could better serve and engage their communities. I spent several months traveling to community development organizations around the Southeast because I wanted to know what people were doing, what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong, and the tools that they were using for community development. I came back to Jackson and started working, doing fundraising at an after-school tutoring program. And like many of you, I remember when Hurricane Katrina hit the coast. And I remember doing everything I could to help the people around me. But more than anything, I felt powerless. I felt like I didn't have the tools that I needed to affect change. So I decided to go back to grad school and study advocacy and human rights. And it was then that I really started looking at different tools that we could use to build a better place. Now, when I tell people that I run a statewide bicycle and pedestrian advocacy group, they often assume what it is that I want. But what I want is a better Mississippi. And what I found is a tool that I think can help us get there. In a place like Mississippi, where we're faced with limited resources, we really have to look for tools that reach across racial and socioeconomic lines. We have to find tools that are affordable and accessible for all people. And we have to look for tools that reach across all age levels and abilities. It's a lot of things to look for. And I bought into the idea that the bicycle could serve as a tool that does all of these things, and a tool that helps us get healthier, has been shown to lead to better economic development, quality of life. And so I bought into let's use the bicycle as a tool for community development. So when we talk about community development, what do we mean? It's defined as the process where community members come together to take collective action and generate solutions to common problems. So if this is the definition we're going to work with, then let's start to talk about some of the common problems facing Mississippi. As recently as 2014, Mississippi was ranked as having the worst quality of life in the nation. And what I found interesting was that that very same report ranked Mississippi by far as having the greatest amount of civic engagement in the nation. So what that tells me is we're ready and we're willing. We in Mississippi know that we have power in our voices. I think we simply have to take the next steps to affect the change we want to see. Bicycling has been shown around the nation and around the globe to be a stimulus for economic development. We've seen success stories from all over the nation. And many of us probably think of the city of Portland, Oregon as somewhat of a mecca for bikes. But I wanted to know how they got there. And what I found out was that it was only after a decision to be intentional. They invested only 1% of the state's transportation dollars to bicycle infrastructure. And after making that decision, bicycle commuting in the city of Portland increased by over 400%. 400%. By simply becoming intentional and making those investments. And we've started to see the same type of change taking place in Mississippi. The Tanglefoot Trail was built in 2013 in North Mississippi and goes from Houston to New Albany. In a very short period of time, since plans for the trail started, we've seen 7 new businesses pop up along the trail. We've seen the same type of success since 2000 with the Longleaf Trace in South Mississippi. One business owner told me that when the trace opened, he saw his sales double, which led to him hiring more employees and expanding his shop. The Brookings Institute says that millennials rank biking, walking, and transit as the top reasons to move to a city. We continually see young people and young families searching out multimodal transportation options for how to get around. When Greg Ballard became mayor of Indianapolis, there was 1 mile of bike lane. But Mayor Ballard feels that in the race for the American city, it will be won by the city that can attract and retain talent. So he decided to use the bicycle as a tool. In under 4 years, he was able to see over 75 miles of bike lanes built in his city, and has a goal by 2015 of over 200 miles of bike lanes. And it's because he thinks the investment is worth it to attract and retain new people. In 2014, Mississippi jumped 16 spots as a nationally ranked bicycle-friendly state. We moved from number 47 in 2008 to number 31 in 2014. And we did, we're getting there. And we did this by starting to become intentional. Through technical assistance and education, we were able to work with community members at the grassroots level to develop ways that they could change their community and they could build bicycle-friendly cities. We started looking at changes from the bottom up and from the top down so that we could be intentional about taking these steps. So if we want to move to the next level, then let's talk about the second part of community development. Looking at solutions to affect change. I really think that one of the things holding us back is an issue of perception. Perception and a lack of ownership. Most conversations I have with people about biking, they automatically tell me how much they bike, right? But more commonly, they tell me how much they don't bike. And the conversation typically leads to people saying, I only bike 1 mile, I'm not a cyclist. I'm not a cyclist, and this issue isn't relevant to me. I think the important thing is if we want to build a better state, then we have to turn that conversation on its head. We have to look at the kind of communities that we want to build, and then look at the tools that we can use to get there. I think one of the reasons we have a perception problem is because we don't see people that look like us. We don't see people that have a similar experience to us. For example, when we're traveling in our cars on the roads, maybe we see a cyclist on this side of the road. And I think if we can start to view those cyclists as someone that could easily be our neighbor or our doctor, we know that everyone is someone's daughter and someone's son. And if we can start to tap into our Southern hospitality and start to see people as everyday people and start to see bicycling as a normal everyday activity, then I think we can start to shift our perception and look at the idea of building better communities and bikes as a way to get there. We launched an initiative to get more women biking in Mississippi because we know that more women bike when they feel safe and they feel comfortable. So we started beginner rides. We also started social events so that women could simply get to know one another. And in a safe environment, they could ask each other questions and they could start to develop relationships. Then they start to feel more comfortable. And oftentimes, we have to create opportunities where there are none. We started an initiative to reach out to low-income and underserved communities in Jackson and throughout the state. And in 2011, we created a curriculum for elementary school students. And we taught them bicycle repair, safety, and maintenance. And they loved it. They loved being able to earn their very first bike. And they loved being able to learn about how they could fix it. In addition, we worked with the Mississippi Department of Transportation to launch Mississippi's first community bike shop. Community bike shops are popping up all over the nation as ways to get people on bikes and to build better access. We've started to take this idea on the road and are expanding the idea of mobile bike shops to places like the Delta and other underserved communities. Because we want to bring that type of empowerment and access to communities that don't have it. There's a transitional living program in Northeast Mississippi that works with at-risk teens to give them opportunities and connect them to jobs. And one of the ways they do this is providing bicycles to these teenagers so that they can gain a sense of empowerment as well as transportation to their jobs and a better sense of freedom and self-sustainability. And we have to find ways to make it easy. If we can create an environment where people start to view bicycling as a way to spend time with their kids, or instead we start viewing bicycling as a way to get a little bit of midday exercise, maybe biking around on our lunch hour. And we start to shrink the change and we start to make it easy. We have a tool that can do all of these things. And the greatest thing about it is it's fun. So if we can make it easy, I believe we'll see a community support it. Anytime we change our own behavior, we start to notice the change that we want to see around us. So if you start biking or walking, you'll probably see a lack of sidewalks or some infrastructure that can be improved along the roads. So if we want to make the change that we want to see for us and for our children, then we have to show the demand. And we have to ask our elected officials and city leaders to make that change from the top down. Cities can start to make small commitments by designing their streets the right way. They can show that they want more livable communities and they want a better quality of life for their residents. Because what complete streets policies do is they ask that we start to design our streets around the needs of the people. Complete streets doesn't mean building a bike lane on every street or a sidewalk down every road. It simply means to take into account the way people are already using the roads and design them around those needs. Because we have to take into account that there are different users of the roads. It's not about creating a car-free society or a bicycle utopia. It's about thinking about pedestrians, motorists, bicyclists, the disabled, elderly, children, and people that are using the roads in different ways, whether by choice or by need. And I think that we have a great opportunity in Mississippi because we've already seen this be successful in other places. We don't have to recreate the wheel. We already know what works, and we just have to take the next steps. So I'm not asking you to wear spandex. I'm not asking you to be a runner or a daily commuter by bike. What I'm asking you is that in light of the changes that building a bikeable and walkable community can make in Mississippi, that you become an advocate for a more livable place and embracing tools that can build a better Mississippi. So I'm asking you to become an advocate for a better place to live. Let's do it together.